Welcome in, everybody. Today, we're going to dive into the story of Queen Esther.
Yeah,
She's really known for her courage and her faith.
right.
And we're going to be using a podcast script from FaithBeamsGPPodcast to kind of guide our deep dive. And this script is all about how we can find our own courage by looking at Esther's story.
Right.
So you might already know the basics of Esther's story. She rises from being an orphan to becoming the queen of Persia.
Wow.
But things get really complicated when she finds out there's a plot to exterminate all of her people.
Oh,
Like, what do you do with that, right? It's incredible how her story has resonated over time.
yeah.
She goes from basically nobody to this position of huge power.
Absolutely.
And then she's given this impossible choice. Does she speak up and risk everything?
Right.
Or stay silent and allow her people to be destroyed?
Right.
I mean, that idea that someone seemingly ordinary can do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
It's a powerful idea. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? If we were in her shoes,
Right.
would we be able to find that kind of strength to act?
Yeah.
One thing the script focuses on is this idea of divine placement, that Esther was, chosen for this specific purpose. But for those of us who might not be, super religious,
Right.
how do we interpret that? Like, what do you think about this idea of divine placement?
Well, that's a great question. And I think the idea of divine placement can be tricky, if you're not really coming from that religious perspective. But think about it this way. Maybe it's not so much about some, predetermined plan,
Right.
but more about realizing the unique situation that we're all in and using that, seizing the opportunity to make a difference. Where we are right now
Yeah.
might be the perfect place for us to have the biggest impact.
I like that. Less about destiny and more about recognizing the potential in any situation.
Yeah.
And this script, it doesn't just tell us Esther's story, from way back when. It gives us examples of how people are showing that same courage today.
Yeah.
Like one that really stuck with me was Michael.
Okay.
He left a super stable corporate job
Oh,
to start a faith-based coaching program.
that's great.
I mean, that is a major leap of faith. And his story, I think, really shows how much Esther's story connects with all of us today.
Right.
We all have those moments where we feel this need to step outside of our comfort zone,
Yeah.
to take a risk for something we believe in.
Mhm.
For Michael, it meant leaving a secure job to do something more meaningful.
Yeah.
For our listener, it might be totally different. Maybe it's starting a business or going back to school or having that tough conversation that you've been putting off.
Right.
Just recognizing that call to action.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like you feel that nudge inside and you choose to act even if it's scary.
Right.
And another example that really resonated with me was Sophia. She's a single mom who leans on her faith to not only get through tough times, but also to help other mothers who are going through similar struggles. There's a lot of Esther in her, right? Using her own experience
Definitely.
to empower other people.
Absolutely. And Sophia's story really shows us another big part of courage, the courage to be vulnerable, to reach out for support and to offer it to others. We don't have to face challenges alone.
Right?
The script talks about surrounding yourself with supportive people, just like Esther had Mordecai, her cousin.
Right. Having people you can rely on is so crucial. We all need our own Mordecais in our lives.
Yeah.
How do we even go about building a network like that? What are the practical steps?
Yeah, that's an important question. And, from a psychological perspective, having a good support system is really important. There are so many benefits. It can reduce stress, can make you feel like you belong, increase your sense of self-worth,
Right.
and even help you bounce back from challenges more easily.
It's amazing how these little things can make such a huge difference in our lives. The script goes on to talk about how we can build courage by shifting our mindset,
Yeah.
like really believing we're meant for something big.
Yes.
But what about when we feel anything but courageous? Those times when doubt creeps in.
That's when those mindset shifts are so important. It's about actively choosing to focus on our strengths and what we can do. Even if we feel uncertain, it's about reframing how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
Reminding ourselves that we can grow and we are resilient.
So instead of getting stuck on our limitations,
Right.
we can choose to focus on what we're good at. We're basically choosing to empower ourselves.
Exactly. And the script suggests using affirmations, Like saying to yourself, I am bold and courageous, just like Queen Esther, or I am capable of overcoming any challenge that comes my way.
I've heard a lot about affirmations, but honestly, I'm a little skeptical. Sometimes they feel like just words. You know what I mean? How do we make them actually work?
Well, you're right. Just saying words without meaning them won't do much, but think of affirmations like directing your thoughts on purpose.
Hmm.
When you keep repeating positive things to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you're training your brain to focus on what you want and the kind of person you want to be. It's about creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow. That's a really interesting way to think about it.
Mhm.
It's not just saying the words. It's about changing that inner voice
Yeah.
and believing in yourself more.
Mhm.
The script also brings up other courageous figures from the Bible, like David facing Goliath.
Right.
Even for someone who's not super familiar with the Bible, I think those stories still speak to us. They're all about courage and resilience.
Yeah.
And they remind us that even when things seem impossible,
Right.
it's possible to overcome them through faith, determination, and standing up for what you believe in.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that strength inside to face our fears,
Mm.
no matter how big they seem. And speaking of facing impossible odds, the script brings up the celebration of Purim, which remembers how the Jewish people were saved because of Esther's bravery.
Right.
Why do you think this celebration is so important to the message of her story?
Well, Purim isn't just a time to remember that something bad was avoided. It's a huge celebration.
Right.
It's full of feasting and costumes,
Oh.
even playful mocking of the villain Haman. It's like saying that courage can win over anything,
Yeah.
that joy and freedom can come even after the darkest times.
It's a powerful reminder that even when things are dangerous, there's always a reason to hope, to celebrate, to believe that good will win in the end.
Exact.
And that connects so beautifully with the whole idea of courage, right? It's not just about facing down fear.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the joy and the freedom that comes from overcoming those challenges.
Absolutely. It's realizing that even when things are really hard, there's room for hope and
Wow.
celebration. And that's a powerful message for all of us, especially when we're going through our own tough times. It reminds us that courage isn't just about surviving hard times. It's about thriving despite them.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Purim brings together that remembering of what happened with such a joyful celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Like acknowledging the bad stuff, but choosing to focus on the good that came out of it.
Yeah,
It feels very relevant to how we handle challenges in our own lives,
absolutely. Purim reminds us that even when things are at their darkest, there's still room for joy, resilience, and even a bit of humor.
Right.
It's not about ignoring the hard parts,
Mm-hmm.
but finding those moments to celebrate the wins,
Mm-hmm.
the big and the small ones.
Yeah, it's finding that silver lining, even when things feel really tough.
So as we, you know, dig deeper into this idea of courage,
Mhm.
what are some other big takeaways from the script that people listening can actually use in their own lives?
One that stands out is that courage isn't something you're just born with.
Right.
It's like a muscle you can build over time.
Uh-huh.
It's not about having no fear. It's about doing something even when you're scared. The more we push ourselves outside our comfort zone, the easier it becomes to face the unknown.
That makes a lot of sense. Like anything else you want to get better at, the more you practice, the better you get at it.
Exactly.
But what about those times when fear just kind of freezes you up?
Yeah.
What are some things we can actually do to find that courage inside of us?
Well, the script talks about the power of positive self-talk. Instead of dwelling on those fears and doubts,
Yeah.
focus on your strengths and the times you've succeeded in the past.
So like consciously changing how we talk to ourselves. Instead of saying, I can't do this,
Right.
we could say, I've overcome challenges before. I can do this too.
Exactly. And another thing the script really emphasizes is how important it is to get support from other people.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to face your fears by yourself. Reaching out to your friends, family, mentors, even support groups, they can give you that encouragement and guidance you need to get through those tough spots.
It's a good reminder that we're all part of a community and asking for help isn't weak.
It's actually strong. The script even talks about seeing the people around us as potential Mordecais.
Right.
And it makes you think, how do we go about building those kinds of relationships?
Yeah.
How do we make sure we have those supportive people in our lives?
That's a great question. Building the strong relationships takes time and it takes effort.
Yeah.
It's about being there for others, listening to them, giving them support, and celebrating their wins. It's also about being vulnerable ourselves
Right.
and letting others be there for us.
It's about give and take,
Yeah.
not just taking it, but also being there for the people around us.
Yeah.
And that idea of mutual support, it feels especially important these days when so many people feel alone and disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having those real connections, those Mordecais who believe in us and want to see us succeed, it can make all the difference in the world.
It really can. And when you have those kinds of people around you, it's easier to find your own courage and resilience. You feel stronger knowing you have people to lean on.
That feeling of belonging, of connection, can be such a powerful thing. It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles,
Right.
that other people have gone through similar things,
Yeah.
and that we can get inspiration and help from each other. So as we kind of start to wrap up our deep dive into Queen Esther's story, what's the one thing you really want people to remember from our conversation today?
I think the most important thing is this. Courage is something anyone can have. It's not just for superheroes or people in history books.
Right.
It's a part of being human, and we can all develop it through practice, believing in ourselves, and having a good support system.
Yeah.
And when we find that courage, we don't just empower ourselves, we also inspire others to do the same.
That's such a powerful thought. It's like this ripple effect.
Mhm.
One person's act of courage can inspire so many others.
Mm,
And in a world that often feels so divided and unsure, that feeling of shared courage and resilience can be a real source of hope.
absolutely.
So for everyone listening, what's one area in your life where you feel like you need to be a little braver?
Take a moment to think about that. Maybe it's something small, like speaking your mind at work. Or maybe it's something big, like finally going after that dream you've had for so long.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, remember, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about taking action even though you are scared. And when you do that, you'll not only surprise yourself with what you can achieve, but you'll also inspire the people around you to be brave and make a positive impact on the world.
That's a really beautiful thought.
Yeah.
It's about realizing that we all have the potential to be courageous and
Yeah.
inspire each other.
Yeah.
And by taking those chances to be brave, to stand up for what we believe in,
Right.
and to be there for each other,
Mm-hmm.
we create a world where courage is everywhere.
Yeah. It's amazing to think about how courage can spread from person to person. It's like one person does something brave and it gives other people the courage to do the same. Exactly. Courage can be contagious,
Yeah.
When we see someone else being brave, it makes it easier for us to be brave too.
Yeah.
And as that spreads, it makes the whole world a braver and kinder place.
And I think that's what makes Queen Esther's story so powerful. It's a story that's been told for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and it reminds us that even when things seem really, really bad,
Right.
one person's courage can change everything.
Absolutely. It shows us the power that each of us has. Esther could have stayed quiet, to protect herself. But she knew that her position meant she had to do something, to speak up for those who couldn't speak for themselves.
It makes you think about the chances we have in our own lives to be courageous, to make a difference. Maybe it's something small, or maybe it's something big, like speaking out against something that's wrong, or helping a friend who's struggling, or going after a dream that seems scary. What are some of those smaller everyday acts of courage that you've seen?
Oh, I've seen so many acts of courage in everyday life. Parents fighting for their kids, people overcoming really tough challenges, people choosing to be kind even when things are hard.
Right.
These acts of courage might not be on the news, but they make a huge difference in people's lives.
I think those smaller acts of courage are often the most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They show us that courage isn't always about doing something big and dramatic.
Right?
It's about being who you are and doing what's right, even in the little moments of life.
Mm.
So as we finish up our deep dive into Queen Esther's story,
Mm-hmm.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from our conversation?
If there's one thing I hope you remember, it's this. Courage isn't about not feeling afraid. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you are afraid.
Yeah.
We all have fears and doubts, but we don't have to let them control us. We can choose to move forward, face the challenges, and make a difference, even if it's scary. Queen Esther's story shows us that we all have the potential to be great, to be courageous,
Yeah.
and to make the world a better place. Don't underestimate yourself. You have the power to change things one brave act at a time.
That's such a great message. It's a reminder that we all have that Queen Esther inside of us just waiting to come out. So thank you for listening. And may Queen Esther's story inspire you to find your own courage and go out there and make a difference.